Edition of the Football Happy Hour. I'm your host, Jeremy St. Louis. Happy to have you along. It is Mock Draft Wednesday, a full first round full of 32 picks coming up this hour. First, though, let's update some of the draft storylines. With the NFL draft inching closer, what are some of the key storylines to look forward to? Starting at the top, all signs point towards the Jaguars taking Aiden Hutchinson first overall. But it's still possible they address the offensive line, a unit they need to upgrade to protect Trevor Lawrence, who got hit far too often as a rookie.
I still think Evan Neal could be in play if you decide you want to go all in on the offensive line and maybe make him a right tackle or play him at guard for a year.
As far as the quarterbacks go, Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett are projected to be the first signal callers selected. And while this may not be the most touted quarterback class overall, with so many teams needing to address that position, who might make a move up the board to take one?
I don't think there's any guy that really lights it up. There's no surefire number one overall pick. But if you're going to invest this type of draft capital and financial commitment to a quarterback, I want to see big return.
Speaking of teams who could make draft day deals, there are 8 teams in possession of multiple first-round picks, starting with the Jets and Giants, who both have 2 in the top 10. The Packers and Chiefs are among the 8 teams with 2 first-rounders, and both appear to have a need at wide receiver. And while this is another loaded class at wideout, will either team have to trade up to get their desired target?
For the love of God, please get Aaron Rodgers some help.
The wait is almost over. Whose stock is rising and who might be in for a draft day slide? Questions will turn into answers April 28th in Sin City. And you just wonder how Deebo Samuel's, the revelation that he wants to be traded out of San Francisco, could factor into some of those draft day storylines. Let's do a little mock drafting. Senior NFL writer Pete Prisco and some of our mock draft experts, Ryan Wilson and Chris Trapasso, joining us. You guys have been mock drafting for a while now. Ryan, I think you're on your 5,000th mock. Chris, you've done a few. Pete, you've also been in there. So let's do that full first round mock draft. Pete, going to start with you. The Jacksonville Jaguars are on the clock. Give us the pick.
Well, with the first pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Iowa State running back Breece Hall. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I would never take a running back first overall. My pick is Evan Neal, the Alabama offensive tackle. And the reason I take him is, look, the right tackle in Jacksonville, Jawan Taylor, has been a disaster. They don't know what they have in Walker Little. The left tackle's on a 1-year deal for the franchise number. You have to get big bodies around Trevor Lawrence for the future. I think if you bring him in and you play him at guard for a year, which Jonathan Ogden did, by the way back in the day. Laramie Tunsil played guard for a year way back in the day. So I think you can do that if you want to. You got to get better about Trevor Lawrence. I know Aiden Hutchinson and Trayvon Walker are in play, but I'm taking Evan Neal.
I thought Pete had a stroke when he started to say Breece Hall. I'm glad he circled back to the offensive tackle. Look, I like Evan Neal. I like this pick. I loved it if it's an Ike Ekwonu. Pete knows I have Ike as my OT1. He has Evan Neal as his OT1, so it makes sense. Pete mentioned Aiden Hutchinson and Trayvon Walker. Look, you can take those guys there. Aiden Hutchinson is my number 1 player in this draft, Jeremy. But at the end of the day, they've drafted edge rushers in 2 of the last 3 drafts. Caleb Chase and Josh Allen, really good football players, and the Jaguars have still stunk. How about you mix it up on the offensive side of the ball, help out Trevor Lawrence, as Pete has alluded to, keep him upright in Doug Peterson's new offense, and I think that will go much further in helping this team win more football games than taking an Aiden Hutchinson or a Trayvon Walker who helps you on the defensive side of the ball but doesn't score points for you.
And how about the upside for Evan Neal? 6'7", 345 pounds, like the skinniest 345-pound person I've ever seen in the world. To have someone that can protect Trevor Lawrence, whether it be on the left side or the right side, I think moves the needle more so than any other edge rusher they would pick at number 1.
Yeah, so the Jacksonville Jaguars assessing an area of need by grabbing Evan Neal. And, of course, he's on the board here in terms of his odds to be a number 1 overall pick. He would pay out at 12-1 if Pete Prisco was the GM of the Jacksonville Jaguars. All right, Ryan, the Detroit Lions are on the clock. Give us the pick.
With the second pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions. They're taking Breece Hall. Got you there, Jeremy. They're going to take Aiden Hutchinson. That's the layup. There's no reason not to take Aiden Hutchinson. He's just down the road in Ann Arbor, where he was unbelievable during his 2021 season. Really good in the years before, but took that huge leap during that final senior campaign. We saw what he did against Ohio State, and that was sort of the tone setter for the year, but that was week in and week out for him. The Lions have 2 picks in the first round. They don't have to panic. They could go in a different direction here. They could even go cornerback. We've seen some murmurings that maybe that might be on the board here. Jeff Okudah might scare some teams away, given the Lions away in particular, given how he has underperformed in recent years. But Aiden Hutchinson feels like the safest pick in this draft. He feels like a guy who's going to come in and contribute right away. I know Pete has concerns about his ceiling, but Pete, I'll tell you what Aiden told me at the Combine when I had to ask this question to him. He said, look, man, I'm 21 years old. If you think I've reached my ceiling, you are crazy. I tend to agree with that. I think this pick is a layup, as close to a layup as you're going to get.
Oh, I think it would be a layup as well. I think they'd race the card up there, and it makes all the sense in the world. He seems like a Dan Campbell type of player. He has that explosive ability. I just think that he's never going to be the 18-sack guy. I think he's going to be more of a 10 and 11, 12-sack guy. Those will be his highs, but he's going to be a good, productive NFL player, and the Lions need help rushing the passer. In that division, with Aaron Rodgers in there, you got to be able to rush the passer, so it makes a lot of sense to go get him.
The Detroit Lions, the first of a few teams that have a number of picks in the first round of the 2022 draft. Okay, Chris, the Houston Texans, another one of those teams with multiple picks inside the top 20. They are on the clock. Who are the Texans taking?
With the third pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Houston Texans pick Kayvon Thibodeau, edge rusher from Oregon. This is another layup. I think to see him still available at number 3 overall, if you're Nick Caserio, Jack Easterby, Lovie Smith, you're ecstatic, because last May, when Ryan and I were doing those way too early mock drafts right after last year's draft, Kayvon Thibodeau was the consensus number 1 player in this draft class. And I think all the off-field stuff, him worried about his brand too much, I think it's kind of silly. When you watch the film, you see an explosive, bendy, highly athletic edge rusher. And this is a Houston Texans team that has needs galore. They are still at the ground floor of their rebuilding process. Even if Thibodeau does take a year to learn some pass rushing moves, I think that's fine, because this is not a team that's going to contend in 2023.
No, Chris is exactly right. On the field, it feels like Thibodeau checks every box, and the off-field branding stuff is sort of weird. I was talking to Scott about this recently, and he said, I've heard so many things about Thibodeau. I'm at the point now where I don't believe 75% of them. The only thing is, and I love Thibodeau's game, and I'm with Chris in that I think he's a top 5 guy all day long. I don't know if he's going to be a good fit in Houston. They're trying to change that culture, and anything that shows up as a potential red mark, and I don't even know what the red mark would be for Thibodeau. Trayvon Walker has much cleaner in terms of off the field. Again, if you can identify what the off the field concerns are, he might be a better selection here in terms of overall fit and culture. But in terms of on the field, there's no disputing that Thibodeau has put up huge numbers where we're still trying to project what Trayvon Walker is going to end up being at the next level, Jeremy.
All right, well, the New York Jets, another team that have multiple picks in the first round, multiple picks inside the top 10, as it turns out. Ryan, let's go back to you. The New York Jets are on the clock. Give us the pick.
Right, Jeremy. So the Jets have 2 picks with the number 4 pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. The New York Jets are taking Ike Ekwonu, offensive tackle, NC State. He is my number 1 overall guy on the offensive side of the ball. I've had him going to the Jaguars in recent mock drafts at the top for the reasons we just discussed about Evan Neal. And I think if you're a team like the Jets and you want to give Zach Wilson time, same conversation with Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, you have to fix the offensive line. Now, they drafted Elijah Bear Tucker last year, who had a really good season when he was healthy. The year before in the first round was Mekhi Becton. And Mekhi Becton, there are concerns about what his long-term future is going to be in New York. And if those concerns are such that you don't know if he's going to be there long-term, you have to fix the offensive line. Now, cornerback is an option here. Wide receiver could be an option here or at number 10, and we'll circle back around and check on that. But I think there's any number of directions the Jets could go to be competitive. And also, you sort of mentioned it earlier, Jeremy, Deebo Samuel might be in the conversation as well at some point.
Yeah, there was some talk about that in the newsroom this afternoon. We take a look at the Jets' needs, too. I mean, cornerback, edge rusher, linebacker, wide receiver, as you mentioned, defensive tackle. But for now, offensive tackle is off the board in this mock draft. Okay, so let's move over to Chris. The New York Giants on the clock. Who's the pick?
At number 6 overall in the 2022 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select Charles Cross, offensive tackle, Mississippi State. And I got to say, I'm happy with Ryan taking Ike Ekwonu because I actually have Charles Cross rated just ahead of the NC State blocker. I think Charles Cross, although he's still young, only 21 years old, he's further ahead, maybe even close to Evan Neal in terms of his pass protection. Awesome balance. He can play left tackle or right tackle. And whether or not you believe in Daniel Jones for 2022 and beyond, that's an organization that needs some more stability on the right side of its line. So I think Icky gives you more highlight reel blocks for the run game, but Charles Cross is just going to block everything and protect your passer, and that's at this point what the Giants need on their offensive line.
All SEC first team Charles Cross off the board, going to the New York Giants to complete the top 5 picks in our first round mock draft here in the Football Happy Hour on CBS Sports HQ. All right, let's go to pick number 6, the Carolina Panthers. Pete, you're on the clock. Who you got?
Well, I'm angry right now because the tackles are all off the board, and that would be very upsetting to me in this scenario. I would try and trade down here, but since we're just picking the picks, I'm going to be stuck and take Sauce Gardner, the cornerback out of Cincinnati. I think Sauce Gardner is one of those players, when you plug and play, he's going to be one of those guys that starts for a long, long time, long, athletic, doesn't give up a lot of big plays, and can really match up in man coverage. And when you look at Carolina, they have some corners. They drafted J.C. Horn last year. He got hurt. But the rest of that group, they brought Jackson back. He's an interesting player. C.J. Henderson, who knows? You can never have enough corners. So I would take Sauce Gardner. But ideally, I would take one of the tackles if they fell to me, or I would trade down and maybe take one of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's one of those situations where you'd see the Carolina Panthers, even their fans saying, wouldn't be upset if we traded down at this point if what we want, what we need is certainly not available at that point. All right, let's go to the 7th pick, Chris. Via a trade with Chicago, the New York Giants are back on the clock. Who's the pick here?
At number 7 overall in the 2022 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select Kyle Hamilton, safety from Notre Dame. I know Pete doesn't agree with me on this, but Kyle Hamilton is my number 1 overall player in this draft class. I think he fits the mold of what you need out of a modern-day safety, and that he can do everything. He's a blitzer. He's great against the run. He has range. He can cover tight ends in man. He's great in zone. We saw those interceptions against Florida State time and time again during this pre-draft process. This is a little bit of a fall for him. Pre-combine, he was considered a top 3 lock, and I think him running a little bit slower pushed that down the board a little bit. But at this point, the Giants secondary is such a big need for this organization with their new GM, Joe Shane, and head coach Brian Dable coming over from Buffalo, an organization with Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer that have seen the benefits of high caliber safety play. They pick the best safety in this class at number 7.
Yeah, I hate this pick. I'll be honest with you. I just don't think you take a safety in the top 10. I don't think any safety is worth taking in the top 10. When was the last time a safety decided games and influenced defenses? I got to go back to Ed Reed. I mean, the modern safety doesn't do that. They're good players. You mentioned Buffalo. Look at the 2 Bills safeties. They were late round picks, and you find those guys. It's one of the best duos in the league. So I wouldn't take a safety in the top 10, and I don't love Hamilton as a player. I don't think he's very twitchy. I think he can run a little bit, sideline to sideline, even though he's a 4.7 guy, but I wouldn't take him in this spot.
Okay, so we've seen some line guys, we've seen some secondary guys. We have yet to see any skill position players on the offense. Pete, does that change with the Atlanta Falcons on the clock at number 8?
Yes, it does. And the reason I would consider quarterback here, I don't love the quarterbacks, I'll be honest with you. I'm putting that out there. I've said it time and time again. This is not a good quarterback draft class. So I'll take my chances with Marcus Mariota and play on. And I'm taking Jameson Williams. And that might sound crazy because you're taking a guy coming off an ACL. He probably won't be ready until midseason. But the Falcons aren't going to be any good anyways. So they can sit back and say, hey, we're going to get Jameson Williams, who is the best receiver in this draft class, and let him sit until he's healthy, and then he will be a big part of what we do on offense. They got Kyle Pitts last year. Now you get Jameson Williams. That's how you start building it when you do eventually get your quarterback.
Yeah, Jameson Williams, you see him there, over 1,500 yards in terms of his single season in 2021. Certainly a guy that a number of teams would be happy to have in an area of need for the Atlanta Falcons. All right, let's go to pick number 9. Chris, the Seattle Seahawks, via the Russell Wilson trade with Denver, are on the clock. Make the pick.
At the number 9 overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks pick Malik Willis, quarterback from Liberty, to be Russell Wilson's replacement. I think he has a lot of the same on-field style as Josh Allen, a similar college career that played at a small school level. But when he played those Power 5 conferences, we saw the interceptions and the bad decision-making. But in terms of his athleticism, the ability to make those big-time throws down the football field, he's far and away better than any of the other quarterbacks at doing those things in this draft class. And I think the Seahawks still want to be competitive. They haven't traded DK Metcalf. They didn't field offers for Tyler Lockett. They can't go into this season with Pete Carroll at his age with Drew Lock as their starting quarterback.
Makes sense in the sense that they need a quarterback. We've heard Snyder and Carroll say that they're going to roll with Drew Lock. That's their guy. Of course, Jeremy, the Combine, they also told us they were going to trade Russ Wilson. So we'll see how that plays out. But here's the thing. If you're sitting there at 9 and you have any questions about Malik Willis in terms of being a long-term starter, and there are going to be questions there, I would think about Derek Stingley here. Derek Stingley has sort of the pre-draft arc that we saw last year from Jamar Chase, who didn't play in 2020 and then lit up his pro day. I feel Stingley's doing similarly, even though he had that foot injury and played in 3 games. But if you like Malik Willis enough to roll the dice on him, and we talked about this yesterday on the Pick Six podcast, me and Traps, then you have to take a risk on a quarterback because you're not going to win this league without a quarterback. Drew Lock isn't a long-term answer, I don't believe, unless something magical happens in Seattle. So I get it, but I would think also about a position like cornerback here with Derek Stingley still on the board.
Chris Trapasso lives in Buffalo. What an insult to mention Josh Allen in the same sentence with Malik Willis. My God. When Josh Allen came out, he actually played quarterback. I mean, he's throwing passes to guys. They bounced off their chest because he's throwing the bouncers and bartenders. Malik Willis didn't play with good players either. But you know what? He's not a quarterback. What he did at Liberty is not close to playing quarterback in the NFL. He looks like a running back. He tucks the ball, one read and run. At least Josh Allen stood in there and made throws. I don't like this pick. I don't like the player. I think he's a 2nd or 3rd round pick in my book. So I wouldn't do this if I were the Seattle Seahawks. So I get to pan 2 of Chris's picks in the top 10. I love that.
I mean, I'm wondering, Noah, has Pete liked any of the picks so far? Like, if this is Pete, are you just angry get off my lawn guy? You've only liked your own pick so far, and even then I think you've questioned your own pick at times. Okay.
No, I never questioned my picks. I just don't like the quarterbacks in this class, and I don't think Kyle Hamilton's that good.
All right. Let's go to number 10, Ryan. New York Jets join the Giants as teams with 2 picks in the top 10. Finish this segment with that pick.
Yeah, I'm going to make producer Noah fall out of his chair with this one because I would love to do the trade here. I am giving the number 10 pick to the San Francisco 49ers for Deebo Samuel all day long. Robert Saleh has connections to San Francisco. We know what Deebo Samuel can do. I can't do that, so Noah, get back in your chair. I'm going to take Trayvon Walker here at 10, which feels like, if we're being honest, where he probably should go based on his production at Georgia. And I know we're talking about traits and looking forward to how good he could be in the NFL. We didn't see that consistently at Georgia because they have 27 first-rounders on that defense, it felt like. So taking him 1st or 2nd or 3rd feels sort of high. 10 feels about right. But the issue for me is that they now can't take a wide receiver at 10. And there could be some guys there, obviously, they could target, like a Drake London, for example. That said, they have picks 35 and 38. So that's why I'm going with Trayvon Walker. You bolster the defense there. At 4, you bolster the offensive line with Ike Ekwonu. And this team is already better than it was 2 hours before this draft started. And by the way, Pete, I got to stick up for Brady Quinn here. You mentioned the 4.7 that Kyle Hamilton ran. You didn't mention the 4.59 he ran at the Combine.
Well, he ran 4.7 at his pro day. What, did he get slower? Did he get heavier? Who knows? I mean, look, he doesn't play as fast as the play against Florida State. It's always the Florida State play. Look at him, the Florida State play. How about the other ones where he's getting spun around in coverage? Look, Trayvon Walker is an interesting player. The traits are there. But where's the production? And everybody says, well, he played on a good defense at Georgia. Sure he did. But he has no suddenness to his rush. And that's concerning to me. I think in this spot, you're right. They probably would take him here, and I would take him and hope that he projects to being an elite pass rusher. But right now, what you see, he's not. As far as trading for Deebo Samuel, no, and no again. And here's why. Deebo Samuel was a 2nd-round pick. Now you're going to trade a first-round top 10 pick to get Deebo Samuel and pay him $20-something million a year. No way. I'm not doing that. I'll wait and get a receiver later in the draft.
Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. The first 10 picks are off the board. Let's do a quick recap of that before we head to our first break. And the first overall pick, Evan Neal to the Jaguars, courtesy of our Pete Prisco. Then it was Aiden Hutchinson. Some edge players, Kayvon Thibodeau. Then Ike Ekwonu comes off for the Jets, who had 2 picks in the top 10. Giants in there with Charles Cross, Sauce Gardner. To the Panthers, Kyle Hamilton to the Giants. First skill position player, Jamison Williams, off the board to the Falcons. Then it was Malik Willis, the first quarterback. And then we finish it off with Trayvon Walker, the edge player, going to the Jets. Full first-round mock draft here on this edition of the Football Happy Hour. 3 offensive tackles came off the board in the top 10, 3 edge players, and then we did see a couple of skill players back-to-back in Jamison Williams and Malik Willis near the end of that first top 10. All right, Football Happy Hour on CBS Sports HQ. Jeremy St. Louis alongside senior NFL writer Pete Prisco, NFL draft experts Ryan Wilson and Chris Trapasso. We are at pick 11 of the opening round that has the Washington Commanders on the clock. Pete, what's the pick?
I think the Commanders need help at wide receiver, so I'm going to take Drake London, a wide receiver from USC. They have a smaller, faster receiver in De'Ami Brown, who they drafted last year. They have high hopes for him. They think he's going to develop into a big play threat. They have Terry McLaurin. They need a big-bodied guy, and if you have Carson Wentz and you traded to get him, you got to get more weapons for him. I think Drake London, even though he got hurt late last season, didn't run a 40. 40 time isn't his thing. It's more about 50-50 balls. I think he plays faster than he'll time anyways. So I take Drake London for the Washington Commanders.
I like it, Pete, for all the reasons you outlined there. People seem to be concerned with his deep speed. If you watch him play in the fall, he was plenty fast. He outran plenty of people to the end zone. He's probably a 4.5 guy. Didn't run at the combine, didn't run his pro day. I don't care. He played that fast, and then some, as Pete noted. High point catch machine, contested catch machine. I think he's going to be a better version of Michael Pittman, his former teammate at USC, the former second-round pick of the Colts. And if you're going to a team as Carson Wentz, you need weapons, and you need weapons with big catch radiuses, and Drake London checks that box for sure, Jeremy.
All right, producer Noah telling us we got to move things along. The Minnesota Vikings at 12. Who are you picking here, Chris?
I'm going to go with LSU cornerback Derek Stingley. And as far as Pete not liking my picks, I figured as the 2 Italians on this mock draft, he'd be on my side, but I digress. The Vikings need corners, and we know Patrick Peterson, on All Things Covered, mentioned that he would love for the Vikings to pick Derek Stingley so he can be that LSU mentor in the secondary. When Stingley was healthy in 2019 at 18 years old, he was the best cornerback in college football, and he's healthy now. We saw him at the LSU Pro Day. This would be a home run pick to land Stingley at number 12 overall for the Vikings.
I actually like this pick. Kudos to Chris on this one.
Here we go.
I think Derek Stingley is going to be a steal for whoever gets him. I really do. I think he's one of those corners that's going to step in, plug and play. The injuries were the issue with him at LSU, but I think he's going to be a talented player. And to go there with Patrick Peterson would be a great thing for him for a year. So I do love this pick, Chris.
All right, let's go back to the Houston Texans at 13. Thanks to the Deshaun Watson deal. Chris, you're up again.
I'm going to go with Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver from Ohio State. Again, the Texans have a ton of needs. I addressed the defensive side with Kayvon Thibodeau at 3. With Garrett Wilson, you get someone that shows you some shades of Stephon Diggs with the springiness, the body control, yards after the catch ability. You re-sign Brandon Cooks, and this would be another scenario where I think a similar type player would be great under the wings of a veteran that's been established, that has multiple 1,000-yard seasons. So whether it's Davis Mills for the long term or just for 2022, adding more explosiveness to this offense after the DeAndre Hopkins trade is an absolute must. And I think this would be another situation where the team would be very excited to get this player where they're selecting in the first round.
2 nice picks for the Texans there in Thibodeau and Wilson. All right, the Baltimore Ravens joined the draft at 14. Ryan, who are you taking here?
With the 14th pick, the Baltimore Ravens are taking Jermaine Johnson, edge rusher, Florida State, BMAX guy. Look, if you talk to teams, they think he's going to go higher than 14. If you watch the 2021 tape, he feels like a middle of the first round guy. 11.5 sacks last year after transferring from Georgia, where he got an opportunity to play, which is understandable on that Georgia defense. Then he went to the Senior Bowl, tested well, went to the Combine, tested even better, and you see his draft stock rise. But if he's here at 14, he makes a ton of sense for a Ravens team that have Odafe Oweh, who had a great season last year as a rookie, and not much else after Matt Judon went to the Patriots. So I think JJ's here, you take him. They would love to get an offensive tackle, but I don't think you take offensive tackle 4 here. Instead, you go with Jermaine Johnson, the edge rusher.
All right, at 15, here come the Philadelphia Eagles with 2 of the next 4 picks. This pick from the Miami Dolphins. Pete, they have needs at linebacker, quarterback, safety, defensive tackle, wide receiver. So where are you going here?
They have a big need at defensive tackle. You know, Fletcher Cox is, probably going to be gone after this year. I think they need to get a big body in there. And I think Jordan Davis, who is the pick from the University of Georgia, will be a much better interior pass rusher than people will give him credit for. I will be shocked if he's here sitting here at 15. In talking to league personnel, he will go higher than this. I think Jordan Davis would be a steal for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I love it, Pete. You mentioned Fletcher Cox. He was reportedly on the trade block last year on the trade deadline. Didn't make it to the Steelers, which would have made me happy. Instead, he returned to Philadelphia, but he's not going to play forever. And Jordan Davis, you see the numbers there, 6'6", 341, rate of 4.78. That sort of gets your attention. And, yeah, he doesn't have an array of pass rush moves, but he collapses the pocket just about every single snap. And that's almost as important as getting onto the quarterback, allow his teammates to make plays. So I think the Eagles, with those 2 picks, can address the defense here, and we'll find out what happens a few picks later, Jeremy, in terms of what else they decide to do.
Yeah, let's go to number 16, the New Orleans Saints. This pick from Philadelphia via Indianapolis. Chris, you're on the clock here. What's the choice?
The number 16 pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Saints select Kenny Pickett, quarterback from Pittsburgh. Now, there is a glaring need at offensive tackle, but I think if you move up in the draft, you better be moving up to pick a quarterback. And I do like what Jameis Winston did before he got injured in the 2021 season. Is he the long-term answer, though, with this new regime, Dennis Allen as the head coach? I don't think so. Get Kenny Pickett. You don't even have to start him right away, although he is, I think, ready to start in week 1. You make your trade up to not pick an offensive tackle or a position player. Get your quarterback in Kenny Pickett that, although he's a little bit older, does have some upside because of the way he can improvise and his arm talent.
No, I get the pick, and I understand wanting a quarterback. I've talked to a few teams that think he's a second-round pick. I tend to agree with that. I've talked to other teams that think he'll be the first quarterback taken for the reasons that Chris has outlined here. But here's my question to you, Pete. Is Kenny Pickett right now better than Jameis Winston? And will he be better than Jameis Winston 2 years from now? I'm not sure the answer is yes. And if it's not, maybe you think about offensive line here.
Yeah, he's not better than him right now, and I don't think if they drafted him he would play, but he will be better than Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, too aggressive, turns the ball over too much. Kenny Pickett will be much better at taking care of the ball. I know he fumbles a little bit because of his small hands. I think this would be a great pick for the Saints. If you're going to move up, are you moving to go get a tackle? I mean, because right here, what tackle is worth moving up for? There isn't one. I think they have to make a move to get a quarterback.
All right, let's go to 17. The Los Angeles Chargers making their first pick. Ryan, you're up.
With the 17th pick, the Los Angeles Chargers select Kenyon Green, offensive lineman at Texas A&M. He can play outside. His future is probably inside, Jeremy, and that's incredibly important to protect your franchise quarterback. And Justin Herbert's been a recurring theme over the course of these first few picks of this mock draft. Protect your franchise quarterback. He plays with an edge. He plays nasty. You would actually think about Jordan Davis here, but Pete already took him to the Eagles. So then you go to the other side of the ball, and you get an offensive lineman here with some versatility on game day. Probably plays guard, but can play tackle in a pinch if you need him to.
All right, let's go to Philadelphia. Pick number 18. Pete, you're back on the clock.
I am back on the clock, and I love this pick for the Eagles. I'm taking Chris Olave, the wide receiver from Ohio State. And if you look at the Eagles, yeah, they have Smith, and they really think highly of him, and he's going to be a big-time player. But Jalen Reagor's been a disappointment, and let's be honest about it. He's probably got one more year to prove that he can be anything more than he's been so far. So why not bring in a guy who can stretch the defense? I think Olave will be a productive NFL player, can run, runs faster than probably he even plays. So I like Chris Olave in this spot for the Philadelphia Eagles.
I agree, Pete. I think you keep drafting wide receivers until you get enough guys around Jalen Hurts to make it worth his while. Jalen Reagor, maybe this is the year. Fingers crossed, you hope. We know Devontae Smith can be special. And you talk about Olave's play speed, and that's interesting because when we talked to Garrett Wilson at the Combine, he admitted that Olave was faster. By the time they were in the 40, Garrett Wilson was a tenth of a second faster, and Garrett Wilson plays faster than Chris Olave. But he has that speed. He's probably the best route runner in this draft class. I think he needs to get a little stronger at the top of his routes. But look, we said the same thing about Devontae Smith, and he was a Heisman Trophy winner and had a really good rookie season. I like the extra weapon for Jalen Hurts. You keep getting him weapons, and you build him as a quarterback as he evolves into something more than what we saw in year one under Nick Sirianni.
All Big Ten first team for each of the last 2 seasons. All right, let's go to the New Orleans Saints. Marching in again with pick number 19. They are with the Eagles getting those 2 picks in quick succession. Where do they go here, Chris?
At number 19 overall in the 2022 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints pick Logan Hall, a defensive tackle from Houston. Now, we know the Saints are not against making kind of an obscure pick in the first round, Peyton Turner last year. And looking at the Saints roster, they need a tackle, but like Pete alluded to, I don't know if there's a tackle worth selecting here. I think the offensive tackle class, after those big top 3 in the top 10, there's much better depth. There's a big gap at that position. I'm just going best player available. I think Logan Hall adds a great amount of pass rushing ability on the interior of this Saints defense, which is really needed.
And some needs here for the Pittsburgh Steelers as we finish off the top 20. Ryan, Steelers on the clock. Where are you going?
With the 20th pick of the 2022 NFL Draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select wide receiver Treylon Burks out of Arkansas. Again, Jordan Davis would be a huge get here. He is long gone. He's gone to Pete Prisco's Eagles. Trent McDuffie could be an option here at cornerback, but the Steelers have such a horrific record of drafting cornerbacks in round 1, it might be in their best interest to pass. And of course, the biggest one is quarterback. 2 are already gone, so instead they restock at the wide receiver position. Juju Smith-Schuster's gone, Ray McLeod's gone, James Washington is gone, and here's Treylon Burks, all 4, 5, 5 of them outrunning SEC cornerbacks to the end zone every single Saturday. You love to see it. He's equal parts Deebo Samuel, A.J. Brown, the aforementioned Juju Smith-Schuster, and I think he's going to fit into this Matt Canada offense, assuming this Matt Canada offense looks like what it's supposed to. It didn't look like it last year. They have their mobile quarterback in Mitchell Trubisky, and now he gets another weapon to go along with Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool.
Yeah, I don't love this pick, and the reason I don't love this pick is because I don't think I think he plays to his 40 time. I know people say he ran away from SEC corners, and talking to a lot of the receiver coaches and personnel people I talk to, they're concerned about him getting too heavy. And if he gets too heavy, what's that mean? He can't run. And all the Steelers need is somebody else who can't run. That was the knock on Juju Smith-Schuster the last year. I mean, he couldn't run. And you got to be able to stretch the field. I don't love this pick. I think there were better options here, particularly at the wide receiver position.
We are through the top 20 picks in our full first-round mock draft with Pete, Ryan, and Chris. Take a breather, fellas. We're going to come back and continue the draft. But first, let's recap what has happened so far with the picks 11 through 20. The Houston Texans got their second pick of the top 20 with wide receiver Garrett Wilson. Philadelphia and New Orleans entered the draft with 2 picks each in quick succession. That's it for their first rounds, and 4 wide receivers taken in the stretch, 4 edge rushers in the top 20, and our second quarterback goes off the board in Kenny Pickett, and Pete Prisco hated all of it.
All right, let's get you caught up on our first-round mock draft with a few of our experts here. Evan Neal goes number 1 to the Jaguars, followed by Hutchinson and Thibodeau. Jameson Williams to the Falcons at 8. Malik Willis, the first quarterback off the board, 9th to the Seahawks. 2 more wide receivers at 11 and 13, respectively. Drake London to Washington, Garrett Wilson to Houston. The only other quarterback taken in the top 20, Kenny Pickett, taken by the Saints at 16. And then the Saints going with defensive tackle Logan Hall with their second pick in this first-round mock. Chris Hassel, joined by Pete Prisco, Ryan Wilson, and Chris Trapasso. They all took turns picking. If you pick a team and that team has another pick, that same expert has the next pick. And that's where we go right now with Pete Prisco and the New England Patriots. Pete, who do you have New England taking here at 21 overall?
They're taking one of my favorite players in this entire draft, and that's Baylor safety Jalen Petrie. This kid is Honey Badger 2.0. He can do so many different things. He can cover in the slot. He can blitz. He's physical. He can play in the deep middle. He can cover. I love this kid's game, and I think when you look at what Bill Belichick wants in his defensive backs, he wants scheme versatility. Can you slide inside and play a dime linebacker? Yes, Petrie can. Can you play outside? Absolutely. Can you play the nickel corner? You bet. He can do so many different things. He will be the best safety in this draft class. Love him as a player. New England would love this player.
I hesitate to agree with you, Pete, only because he's been blowtorching my picks and Traps' picks with every opportunity. But I think you're right. Petrie is an extremely good player. I mean, you could go Trent McDuffie here. You could go Dax Hill here. There are another number of options, but they fill the exact same position that you're talking about. Petrie offers that versatility where he can play in the slot, he can play deep, he can play outside, he can play in the box. All things that seem like Bill Belichick like on his defense with those smart players. And I love the idea of him being the smaller version to some extent of Kyle Duggar, who they drafted a few years ago out of Lenore Ryan, and has been a really good football player for the reasons that you laid out for Jalen Petrie. So I get it, I understand it, and I actually like this pick here at 21.
All right, let's move on to the Green Bay Packers, who have picks number 22 and number 28. You would think with one of these picks, you would take a wide receiver here to help Aaron Rodgers. Ryan, you are picking for the Packers at 22.
You'd think, Chris, that's right. With the 22nd overall pick, the Green Bay Packers select Devontae Wyatt, who is not a wide receiver. He is a defensive lineman from Georgia. And this is worst-case scenario for Green Bay, and it might be part of the reason they end up trying to trade up. I love Devontae Wyatt, the player. He does a lot of things really well on that defense. It has so many first-round picks coming out of it. He had a really good Senior Bowl where he showed just how quick he can be as a big guy on the interior. But he's not a pass catcher, and that's a concern for a Packers team that is light on pass catchers. Again, they could trade up, which might make some sense given how this has played out. They could go with Jahan Dotson here, who I don't know fits exactly what they want. He's a little undersized. He's not a big target, which Aaron Rodgers likes. And he has his smaller targets in Amari Rodgers and Randall Cobb, so I don't know how many little guys you want out there. So I have him going with defense, give Kenny Clark some help on the inside, and then maybe at 28 you can find a better value for wide receiver there.
I think there would be some riots in Green Bay, Wisconsin if this was the pick, but I think Packers fans have to realize they still have Aaron Rodgers, and this is a pretty deep wide receiver class. And I agree with Ryan. It's all about how the board has fallen, and without Treylon Burks there, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jamison Williams already gone, I don't really think there's a wide receiver worth the number 22 overall pick. And I think their GM, the head coach, the brain trust there in Green Bay would really be fine with saying, we're not liking the value at wide receiver. Let's just get another really good interior pass rusher to pair with Kenny Clark.
And maybe before then they go out and they maybe make a trade for a guy like Deebo Samuel. We'll see. Number 23, the Arizona Cardinals and the drama surrounding Kyler Murray. Chris, you have the pick for the Cards.
At number 23 overall, the Arizona Cardinals select Arnold Ebiketie, edge rusher from Penn State. I mean, it's all the talk has been around Kyler Murray of late, but they lost Chandler Jones. And I don't think Arnold Ebiketie can be a Chandler Jones replacement by himself. That would be kind of a tall order, but you got to start somewhere. And I loved Arnold Ebiketie on film, the Temple transfer who was really good at Temple, and then in his one season at Penn State showed pass rushing moves and burst and bend, speed to power conversion. I think if he was a few inches taller and a little bit longer, we'd be talking about him as a concrete first-round pick. This would be a little bit of head-scratching, but I think this is a really quality football player that will hit the ground running in the NFL.
Yeah, and this would fill a major need. I mean, you look at the Cardinals, they have to get another pass rusher on that defense. Clearly, that's something that they have to look at. There are options here as well, and you could wait until the second round, maybe, if you wanted to pass on this. But I would have no problem with this. I know there's a lot of upside to him as a player, but they need to fill a need, so it makes a lot of sense for me.
Okay, 8 teams without a first-round pick. The Dolphins behind Pete Prisco, the only appearance by the Miami Dolphins here in our first-round mock. My favorite part of Pete Prisco's setup at home is the mother and daughter Dolphin. Let's move to the Cowboys at 24, and Ryan Wilson has that pick.
With the 24th pick in the NFL draft, I'm taking over for you, Pete. The Dallas Cowboys are taking
That's
Tyler
my pick.
Linderbaum, the center. I snuck into the draft war room. I took it for you. Go ahead, Pete.
Okay, Pete.
Why
I'm
are we
sorry,
taking Tyler
man.
Linderbaum?
Yeah, go ahead, Pete. If that's your pick, you make
The
it, buddy.
pick is Tyler Linderbaum. You know what? That's like somebody tipping off the picks before they're made. You're going to get in trouble with the National Football League. So, look, it is Tyler Linderbaum. And here's the thing: the Cowboys need help in the middle of that line. I don't think they're very good at center right now. They could be a lot better. And I had a GM tell me Linderbaum is the highest-rated center he ever graded, ever. And that's high praise. He's an athletic kid. Get the run game going, improve that offensive line. They could also look for defensive line help here, maybe another pass rusher, but I think Linderbaum would make a lot of sense.
Okay, no tipping here, Ryan. I'm just going to give you this next pick. It's number 25 for the Buffalo Bills. Who are they taking?
With the 25th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills are taking cornerback Trent McDuffie out of Washington. Pete will tell you that he likes McDuffie's teammate Kyler Gordon a little better. I like the versatility that McDuffie gives you, even though he played primarily outside in Washington. NFL teams like him in the slot. They think he can move there. He told us as much at the Combine. He can play safety if you want, and he's a tough, smart football player. Great against the run. You see that here. He is great in coverage. He moves really well going forward and backwards, moves well laterally, can flip his hips, all the buzzwords you like to talk about when we talk about cornerbacks. And this is on a Bills team that doesn't have a lot of needs, as Traps will tell you. So why not get better in the secondary where there are a few needs there? You'll get Trey White back from that ACL. But I love this pick here. I just don't know if McDuffie will be here once we get to the actual draft.
I think you got the position right. Absolutely. They need to take a corner. But I would take Kyler Gordon for the exact reasons you mentioned. You talk about versatility. He played inside. He played outside. He's tough. He's physical. I think he's going to be a better player than McDuffie. So I think you got the position right. I just think you picked the wrong Washington corner.
Okay, Pete Prisco, again, not liking a pick from one of his colleagues. Let's move on to the Titans at 26. Chris, good luck making Pete happy with this pick.
At 26 overall, the Tennessee Titans pick Trevor Penning, offensive tackle from Northern Iowa. I think the Titans are kind of a different team in that they want to run the football, play action. They still have Derrick Henry. They'll get him back from injury at full strength. And you look at their offensive line. Taylor Lewan has been injured. The guard play isn't very good. You need someone at right tackle after the debacle that was that Isaiah Wilson selection 2 years ago. And Trevor Penning kind of feels like a Tennessee Titans type of offensive lineman. He was so nasty at the Senior Bowl, 6'6" and already 330 pounds. You don't have to worry about him getting bigger and stronger once he gets to the NFL level. And this feels about right for where he ultimately should go. He feels like a late first-round pick that would be an instant plug-and-play starter at right tackle in Tennessee.
Not even going to give Pete a chance to critique that one. We're just going to give him the next pick, number 27, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Pete.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with Kyler Gordon, the corner from Washington, who I just raved about. You look at the Bucs secondary here. Carlton Davis is, one of those guys, and you look around the rest of that group, they could use upgrades there. And so I think you need to get another corner. If you're going to win the NFC, you got to beat the Packers. They can throw it around. You got to beat the Rams. They can throw it around. So I think you have to have good cover people on the back end. So I'm going to take Kyler Gordon, the cornerback from the University of Washington.
Yeah, Trey McDuffie told me at the Combine that Kyler Gordon was freakishly athletic, the best athlete on that team, and it shows up on tape. I like both these players a lot, but I think Pete's right. You get some help in that Tampa Bay secondary. Dax Hill, perhaps out of Michigan, could be a consideration here, but both players are similar in that they're fast. They're ball hawks. They play extremely well in coverage, and they do a lot of the things physically that you need guys on the outside to do. Kyler Gordon makes sense here, and I think it would be a good pick for the Buccaneers should he still be available.
All right, the Packers are up again at number 28 after Ryan had them taking defensive tackle Devontae Wyatt at number 22. Ryan, if you don't go with a wide receiver here, you're going to have cheese all over your face, I think.
Yeah, this feels like, Chris, what Donovan McNabb had to endure when he was drafted at Radio City Music Hall and just got booed for walking across the stage because that wasn't the guy Eagles fans wanted. Because the Packers are out of luck. With the 28th overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Packers are taking Devin Lloyd, linebacker out of Utah. I absolutely love Devin Lloyd. If you're a Packers fan, you probably don't like him. The 31 other teams' fan bases love Devin Lloyd for the exact same reasons I do. He's a sideline-to-sideline guy. He ran a 4.75 at the Combine. Do not care. He plays so much faster than that. He is so incredibly quick off the ball. Great coming downhill. Great in coverage for an off-ball linebacker. I know Traps isn't quite as high on him as I am, and that's okay. I think he makes sense here in Green Bay. but only because, again, we're out of wide receivers. You mentioned it, Chris. Get on the phone, try to get Deebo Samuel if you can with some of these picks. Trade up earlier in the first round to get a wide receiver, because as we sit here, you were again shut out at the wide receiver position, going back all the way to 2002 when they took Javon Walker.
Yeah, you mentioned that Aaron Rodgers right now has a lot of short pass catchers, and Jahan Dotson, probably the next guy up to be drafted in this mock draft. The way it's laid out, he's not even 6 feet tall, might not even be 5'11", where he's listed at. Let's recap the picks here in the 20s. Mostly all defense. Only offensive players are offensive linemen from the state of Iowa. Tyler Linderbaum to the Cowboys at number 24, the center out of Iowa, and Trevor Penning, the offensive tackle out of Northern Iowa, an FCS school. A quarter of the league without a first-round pick a week from tomorrow. These are the 8 teams with multiple first-round picks. We've gotten to 6 of them so far in this mock. Still awaiting Detroit's second pick. They're coming up at number 32. And the Chiefs are coming up with back-to-back picks here at 29 and 30. The Packers just had 22 and 28. And our guys did not have them going with a wide receiver at either one of those picks. Let's bring in the guys who helped put this mock together. Pete Prisco, Ryan Wilson, Chris Trapasso, all draft experts. Let's go to Pete Prisco with the Chiefs. Now, Pete, Ryan had the 2 Packers picks in the 20s, and he said no wide receivers were good enough for those picks. You would think the Chiefs are kind of in that same boat, needing a wide receiver early in this draft.
Yeah, and they're going to take one. They're going to take Jahan Dotson. I think when you look at the Penn State wide receiver, you mentioned he's a smaller receiver, not a big guy, but he can run. And the Chiefs need to find a replacement, another replacement for Tyreek Hill. Yeah, they added Valdez-Scantling. Smith-Schuster's in the middle of the field. Weapon doesn't run that well. So why not add another threat who can run down the field? So I think you take a wide receiver in this spot.
I don't know why Pete is perpetrating this myth that Juju Smith-Schuster can't run. He's fine. He's fine. I don't know where this is coming from. It's not like he's an offensive lineman, Pete.
He doesn't
but
run.
I think the Jahan Dotson thing. Oh, stop it. Here's the thing with Jahan Dotson. I think he's a perfect fit in Kansas City, even though I have a second-round grade on him. I've talked to teams that like him more in the second round. But if you're going to a system with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, where you will get schemed open all day long, that makes sense. That is a fit. That's no longer a reach. I think it would be more of a reach in Green Bay. We don't know how long Aaron Rodgers is going to play. Cold weather comes into effect at times there as well. I think the Jahan Dotson pick is one that I like. I don't like the Juju Smith-Schuster slander, however.
Yeah, what's going on, Pete? Juju can't run at all anymore?
He just never has been a fast guy. He's been a possession receiver. That's what he is. He doesn't replace Tyreek Hill. Stop it.
I don't know. Mahomes says, hey, I can overthrow these guys and they'll still catch him because they're so much taller than Tyreek. Pete, you just went with Jahan Dotson, 5'11". Chiefs are up again at 30. Who are you having taken?
Yeah, I'm taking David Ojabo from Michigan, the outside linebacker / edge player. I think the Chiefs are in a spot where they can take him. Look, we know he tore his Achilles tendon. It's going to be a while before he can play. But they need to upgrade their edge rush situation. Frank Clark hasn't been as good as they thought he would be. He had a disappointing season last year. I think if you can get Ojabo, sit him for a while, and then maybe you get him for the second half of the season. And if you do, you play in a division where Russell Wilson throws it, Justin Herbert throws it, and Derek Carr throws it. So you got to be able to rush the passer. I would take Ojabo in this spot.
A couple of Big Ten guys for the Kansas City Chiefs back-to-back. The Bengals are up at 31. Chris?
We're going to go with Andrew Booth, the cornerback from Clemson. He's a former big-time recruit. We've already addressed the offensive line. Maybe think about Daxton Hill here, but we like Mike Hilton in the slot. With Andrew Booth, you get big-time talent to kind of round out this secondary that was a patchwork secondary with a lot of free agents as the Bengals made to the Super Bowl last year.
Speaking of rounding out, let's round out this first-round mock with the Detroit Lions. Their second of 2 picks here in the first round. Ryan, you had him go with Aiden Hutchinson, number 2 overall. Who are they going with the last pick in the first round?
With the 32nd pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions take Dax Hill, safety out of Michigan. He's listed as safety, but he can play in the slot. He can even play outside, deep center field, in the box. A lot of the same things we've been talking about with these safeties that have gone in the first round, Chris. And he ran a 4.38 at his pro day, at the combine. He plays that fast. I think this is a great fit on the back end for the Detroit Lions, who, as I mentioned earlier, haven't quite gotten what they wanted out of Jeffrey Okudah, their former first pick a few years ago, cornerback.
Hey, let me go out by piling on one of the picks again. Take Desmond Ridder in this spot.
This is where the Lions can afford to take a quarterback, and Desmond Ridder will be better than Malik Willis. He's got more upside than Malik Willis in terms of playing quarterback in the National Football League. Take Desmond Ridder in this spot.
Pete.
I think it would be a great pick for the Lions.
Yeah, so that's only 3 quarterbacks in this first-round mock that we just had from our 3 experts. That's right where the over-under is, right at 3 in Vegas. Guys, thank you so much. Pete Prisco, Ryan Wilson, Chris Trapasso putting this mock draft together for us on CBS Sports HQ. Let's recap it. Evan Neal went first to Jacksonville, so then Aiden Hutchinson second. Kayvon Thibodeau maybe a little bit higher than he has been in mock drafts of late, followed by Ike Ekwonu and Charles Cross to round out the top 5. It was Malik Willis, the first quarterback off the board, 9th to the Seattle Seahawks. Into the teens we go, a couple more wide receivers before we get to our next quarterback. Kenny Pickett goes to the Saints at 16, and then they choose their second pick with Logan Hall, the defensive tackle out of Houston. Steelers get Treylon Burks, and that kind of puts the Packers between a rock and a hard place, according to Ryan Wilson, because we know with that 22nd pick, with that 28th pick, they want a wide receiver. But Ryan just didn't think the way this draft unfolded that there was a wide receiver good enough for them to pick. He thought about Jahan Dotson? No. The Kansas City Chiefs get him at number 29 ahead of David Ojabo at 30th overall. Pick 6 podcast with Will Brinson. Now that we're coming up on a week to the NFL draft and we still have a lot of things moving and a shaking. Will Baker Mayfield get moved? We got Deebo Samuel, who we learned today has requested, maybe demanded a trade from the San Francisco 49ers. Check out the podcast with Will Brinson. They've got new ones every couple days.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.